Hello everyone and welcome. Today I will be painting Sir Gawain from the Shadows over Camelot board game. It's been a while, this video has been edited and has been sitting on my computer basically for some time. But I didn't get around to actually doing the voiceovers for it, so please accept my apologies. And let's get right to it. First up, this is the first time for me, and I am using contrast paints, and damn, are they a fun little thing to use. Yes, so I'm using Caliban Green for his robes, and I can rightly say that I am not using them correctly because this miniature has been primed white and that is it. So it can't really mm, the paint cannot take fully advantage of a zenithal highlight. So in order for this paint to be absolutely awesome, you need to have it painted, primed in a black color and have a zenithal highlight of white or of gray. Now, I'm doing the best I can, but what I can tell you is that I absolutely love the coverage, even though it is a little bit thinned down. As I'm watching this and as I painted the miniature, I realized that the green I chose, this green, is a little too dark. And what I mean by chose is not for this miniature, because for this miniature it's just fine. It looks absolutely amazing. But I bought this Dark Angels green specifically for the Gaunt's Ghost miniatures for their cloaks. And now that I saw how it came out, I'm thinking that I'm definitely not going to use this so very dark green for those cloaks. But I'm definitely going to try and find a different contrast paint that will work just as well, but it will be much lighter. I don't want to mix this contrast paint with a different color because it will lose its properties if I mix it with any layer or base coat that I have. Finding a different contrast paint that I can mix it with might be a solution. I will have to think about it. But yes, why did I choose this specific color and this thing to test this out on? Well, these contrast paints were designed specifically to achieve in one or two coats um, as much variation as possible and to simulate fabric from what I can tell, because due to their nature they tend to pool in recesses and come out very light on raised edges, simulating a sort of highlight uh, in themselves without actually having to do a shade, a wash, a shade, and then re-highlight with everything else. I absolutely love the way this came out. I plan to fully experiment with them going forward. Now I just have to have patience and buy some more of them. As you can see, I also applied some of the Caliban green to the base in order to simulate a sort of greenish stone. This is the same technique that I used with all the other miniatures in the Shadows of Camelot series, taking the accent color, the knight's color, and trying to get the base as realistic as possible to simulate stone while keeping that color as a sort of base color as a to still differentiate. While some of them do not look as natural as I would like, I believe it's quite enough for a tabletop game, and the point of it was to easily recognize which knight is standing where. Next, for the scale mail, I used, of course, lead belcher again, and covered the entire part of the scale mail with fine tip brush. I wanted to try out a new technique. I wanted to try and paint him as cleanly as possible to simulate sort of how other painters do it and how pictures are posted with just parts of the miniature painted one at a time. I really took my time and was very, very careful and not going over any other elements of the miniature with these colors. And there is something to be said about this technique, even though it does take quite a bit more time. But the satisfaction you get when your brushstrokes are just fine and perfect enough. I feel that my brush control has increased quite a lot in these past few months compared to when I started and I was making mistakes with almost every brushstroke and I had to go back and fix absolutely everything that I painted on a miniature. And I will chalk this up to my practice, as sporadic as it was. Additionally, relatively recently, about a month ago, I was really trying to find and have a look-see at a animation from Warhammer Plus. And as I was not able to find it anywhere and was very, very upset that I couldn't find it, and I decided to finally get the subscription to Warhammer Plus. Now, I am not a fan of how Games Workshop treated content creators, especially animators, and I'm still upset I didn't get to see Astartes 2. But I can rightly say that I did enjoy some of the content there, especially the Citadel Masterclass, which I can rightfully say that I can do a better job of painting skin right now, even though you will not see me practicing that in this video. Though I look forward on the next one to actually try it out. And additionally, these board game miniatures, these Shadows over Camelot miniatures, don't really have the very good fine details that Warhammer miniatures have. But I can rightly say, with what I have learned, that I am not so afraid of painting faces anymore, and really look forward to actually testing out what I have learned and sought in those videos. So look forward to those when I actually get to make one of those. But yes, again, I'm learning, and I'll take any source I can get to study anything that I can. Initially, I planned on doing the pauldrons with a silverish color like Runefang steel, but I decided against that as well again, and there is the lead belcher because I will not be applying Nuln Oil to it all over the place, and it will still retain its shine and create a subtle difference between the chainmail and the rest of and the pauldrons and his armor pieces and armor joints, so to speak. But I will be shading with Null Oil the chainmail, creating a much more darker effect on that chainmail. Well, at least I think that was what I was thinking at the time. Again, I need to have a better schedule of actually recording the voiceovers. Well, this information is fresh in my mind. Unfortunately, life tends to get in the way. You know, being sick, unable to record, or busy doing other stuff. As you've recently seen, my weekends are rather full. Also, recently, I've bought a little something that will help me do a bit more work in the twilight hours around the house. Fortunately, I think I will have found an application for it in this hobby as well. I recently brought a battery floodlight. It's a pretty powerful white light, and I want to see if I can use it to actually give me much more light while I am painting. Uh, as you can tell by the small ring light that you can see on the right side, it's not the best light. I have an additional one on the left, but unfortunately I didn't realize that my camera shifted slightly and you could see the light source. But yes, I intend to remedy this and have much more light, as well as try to film much closer so you can actually better see my brush strokes. This is a little experiment I plan to do. For the shield, I started, as you can see, with black. This is another one of those cheap acrylic black colors from the crafter. I bought a huge I don't even know what to call it. Tube. That's the tube. Tube for it. When my wife actually wanted to paint something furniture, I think, and that thing stuck around and it's been in our shelf for 3 years. That's the black I use. So no Abaddon black, nothing so fancy. Just the generic crafter paint. It still does the trick. It's so amazingly thick coverage no matter how much I thin it down. For the face, I started again with the Bugman's Glow as a base. And again, this is one of those techniques that I saw in masterclass, but I didn't quite get. And that is because you come with Reichland Flesh Shade or um, Pale or something. I'm missing the name right now. It's skipping in my head. But yes, you come up with another layer and you cover it entirely. And it seems to me that the base coat is lost, sometimes completely. But maybe other people see it, and I will try to not fully cover anymore and see, as they said in the masterclass. The top part of the shield is painted with Caliban green as well. I know it's not quite visible because it's such a dark green, and especially next to that black, it was hardly visible. But you will see it later on when the paint dries a bit more. The greaves were also painted with lead belcher. And yes, I know it is very difficult to see sometimes due to the angles in which you have to hold the miniature and to the brush to get the paint. But that is the one of the um, downsides to trying to paint already assembled miniatures. I'm really hoping that the Gaunt's Ghost, which I have actually kept as sub-assemblies, will be much more easy to paint. Though I'm not sure how I will actually glue them back together once they are painted? Will the special plastic glue work through the paint? Do I have to clean the paint on the contact points? I will see. This is a problem for a future video, not now. As I mentioned, you can now see, once the paint has dried a little, you can clearly see the Caliban green on the top part of the shield. As for the little sword on the shield, the emblem, I painted with Warboss green to give it a better contrast against the black of the background of the shield. Again, going back to my trusty rim color, rim shield color, lead belcher again, going very finely across the rim of the shield. And again, I can't stress this enough. I feel that I have grown so much with my skill, my brush control, but at the same time, I feel like I have so much farther to go. It's just so annoying sometimes when you realize I am doing so well, yet I want to do even better. It's satisfying and annoying at the same time. I don't know how to explain it better than that. Maybe other painters will get what I'm saying. For the leather pouches and for the leather straps to the pouch, I decided to go with the XV88 color. This is a light brownish color. Okay, I don't know what to say, but it stands out versus the belt, which I painted with Rhinox hide, and it creates this contrast that he's wearing two types of leathers. Not necessarily, it creates this difference between the element just enough that it gives the miniature a bit more look, and I'm finally understanding the difference in shading. I know it's kilometers away, but the difference between the two belts. But again, this is a new technique that I did. Technique again. This is a new choice I made because on previous miniatures, all leather was painted in the same color. I didn't really care, but actually this makes it much more stand out and absolutely amazing. I painted the inside of the shield using Rhinox hide as well, I believe. This is to simulate a very dark wood, and I thought it would work. For his the backside of his boots and his greaves, I went with the same XV88 for the inside leather, and with again Rhinox hide for the leather straps. This was really hard to do pass because I think I was already getting very tired, and I kept going instead of being very careful. I was slipping all over the place, and it was very difficult for me to actually not make mistakes. At some point, I think I gave up and just base coated everything with XV88, saying that I will come back with Rhinoxide over the raised edges to fully do the straps. The mace I painted with the base color of Rune Lord Brass, and then I shaded with a Agrax Earthshade, deciding to leave it at that. I planned initially to re-highlight it with another dry brushing of Rune Lord Brass, but I didn't feel that the mace needed it anymore. It somehow shined, or it still kept its shine very well into the light. Also, I really plan on upgrading my palette, is in the sense that I want to buy more and more paints, and I saw that actually not necessarily Agrax Earthshade is the best color, the best shade to use on Runor Press. Rather, I should be using something reddish to give it a bit more shine. The same could go for gold if I want to shade that. I will look into it. I already have a wish list of paints, but let's just say that my bonus for this month has already been spent on a lot more miniatures. And when I started this hobby, I said, "Oh, I'm not going to have a pile of shame or unpainted miniatures. I just will assemble and paint them as soon as I get them." Bear in mind, I started this hobby with like three board games, three entire board games with a huge number of miniatures behind them unpainted, and I just kept buying more and more. But good thing I did buy these last rounds, because apparently they must have been the last on stock, because the shop actually pulled these miniatures from their store page after I bought them. So I'm more than happy that I've got these, especially the little wolves. No more foreshadowing. Bad, bad. Make a video about it. That was a note to myself. The 3 stars on his shield, I of course used Retributor Gold in order for me to paint them, and I this is a very close combination to one of the other types of miniatures that I really enjoyed painting, and that I found that the color combination worked fine. A goldish color on a green background. I think that looked amazing. And I'm remembering now the other miniatures that I'm talking about were the snakes from the Wrath of Ashardalon series. And I painted them with a base coat of green. I honestly don't remember what green it was. But then I went and made a metallic wash of sorts. I made a shade of Retributor Gold. Yes, I made a shade out of that because I thinned it down so much that it actually went in all of the crevices, and it also made like a film about it. I don't know if I talked about it during that video, but it was absolutely amazing video. Go check it out. It's a very short one. It's one of the very first videos that I posted, and again, I cannot believe how well those came out. For this miniature, I just used it just a little bit thinned down because I wanted them to pop out and to be fully covered in that gold paint. And now I get to another painstaking detail that I wanted to paint on his skirt. Let's go with that. Um, the trim I did also in Retributor Gold, and it's always tricky when painting something so delicate. The brush tends to slip. But as I mentioned before in this video, if I tried this back when I started this hobby, I probably would have spent hours getting this right. Instead, I can rightly say that I think I did it in about half an hour, the entire process. It might not be very clear in the video with all the cuts and going back and forth, and it's also a bit sped up, but yeah, I think it took about half an hour in all. But I'm talking not just that trim, I'm talking about all the details, the circles and the inlets. You'll see in a moment. It does take a while, and it requires an enormous amount of patience and going back and forth with all the colors. Fortunately, I actually these paints were drying quite quickly as the thin coats and um, the temperature in the house actually helped or something. I don't know. They were quite quickly dry, and I was able to move on to a next color if I needed to correct something. as you can see, nothing is fully smooth sailing, so there were a few mistakes I had to fix. So yeah, it's not as great as I make it out to be. There's still a lot more room for improvement for me. But hey, that's why I started this channel. That's why I started this hobby, because I want to get better at it and because I really enjoyed it. For his beard, I used standard Mechanicus gray as a base color, and then I will give a few highlights and a few picked out a few strands of his beard with a white color. With a what color am I using for white? I think no, no. I think I actually went into Corax White for the first time. Yes, I think I actually finally opened that bottle of Corax White. We'll see when, if ever, I actually open Abaddon Black. But yeah, um, those were a few highlights to give a few strands of his beard a more grizzled look. I don't know if that's the word, but yeah. And back to the detail work on the little circles. Incredibly fine detail work, as light as I could. I actually have some very fine brushes. I don't know if they're synthetic or not, but I've recently found that the layer brushes from Citadel are much better for me to control it, and I really want to get better at controlling the paint with the fine tip that these brushes have. Hopefully, I'll get even better at it. Another thing that I almost forgot to mention, in case you missed it, it's basically been the entire background of this video. I've recently bought an actual wet palette. It's nothing major brand. I honestly can't even pronounce its name. But oh my god, is it so much better than the improvisations that I had. It's much larger. I have a whole lot of room to play on, and can't wait to see other projects that I paint on. But yes, it's absolutely amazing. Having a wet palette is, I honestly, it's again magic in a box. That's what people say about the shades. But being able to easily and very controlled thin your paints is absolutely amazing. Also, not having them dry instantly is a great benefactor. I remember painting my first miniature, which is not present on this channel because the first miniature I painted was a Chardonnay himself, though he can't really be considered a miniature seeing as it's huge. And I did it off camera, and uh, I did it before I even had the box that I made, and was able to film anything. And I literally used a plastic palette, and by the time I finished halfway painting him red, the red on my palette was already dry. So yes, I highly recommend using a wet palette. It's absolutely amazing. back to the base again, and this time more dry brushing with all of the previously used colors from the entire miniature all over the base, mostly the greens, and then a dry brush with lighter colors such as gray and white to simulate stone. And I with that we're almost done, except the face, which was mostly painted off camera unfortunately, or the footage was so blurry that it could not be used. Again, I'm sorry about that, but trust me, you didn't miss much except me blundering like an idiot trying to simulate as much as possible um, skin tone, but failing utterly. It's actually better that this footage was lost. Any credibility I have as a miniature painter would have been lost along with the footage. But with that, we're approaching the end, and it's time for the washes. Like I mentioned, Agrax Earthshade for the coppery bits and the leathers, and Null Oil for some of the metallics, while leaving others plain in order for them to keep their shine. And with that, I will let you enjoy the final shots in a few moments. But before I leave you, the shameless plugs at the end as always. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and share it with a friend. Help me reach 100 subscribers. I would really like to do that, and I'm feeling motivated enough that if I do reach 100 subscribers, I will actually change my studio and make a brand new one, because this one is way too big and it takes up much too much space out of my desk. And when I designed it, I initially thought that I would hold it in the middle of the room and it wouldn't bother anybody, because I would have the entire living room to myself when I paint. But that is no longer the case, because now I share my living space, my living room, when all the time with my wife, because the bedroom is used by our lovely two children. So yes, I plan, if I do ever reach 100 subscribers, to actually make a different studio, the one that will be permanently locked to the wall and right on top of my desk, and that can be open. I already have the plans. I am more than willing to share it with anybody who would like to start a hobby such as this and has limited space to work in. This is one of the problems that I have found, and most of the guys that I see painting miniatures and on YouTube and stuff, and most of the masterclass that I see have a large studio specifically designed for it. When I refer to a studio, I'm literally referring to a box that I will be making, but this time a much more pleasant box and a bit more compact, designed specifically for this role. So again, I say, if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe, help me reach 100 subscribers, and I will see you in the next one.